Hello guys. In this video I'm not going to be building anything. Instead I'm going to look back at this diorama here, which is the first diorama I ever built when I got into model making in about 2015-2016. This diorama is, well, not very good at all really, but I thought it would be useful to go back to it, look at it with a critical eye, and think about what I could improve if I were to make a similar diorama or a remake diorama in the near future. Before anything else, I have to say this diorama no longer exists. I've only got the photos of it. It wasn't good enough to keep when I moved from Malaysia back to the UK. So apologies if you see the same photos over and over again, but they're the only ones I have. Although I still do have the individual models. So first of all, what do we have? Well, we've got Tamiya's SU85 there in the background. We've got Tamiya's quarter-ton amphibious vehicle in the left foreground, which you might remember I built another version of recently. The German figure's been escorted by the Russian soldier armed from Masterbox. Then the figures around the amphibious vehicle are from ICM, they came with the vehicle. So despite this being not a very good diorama at all, I do think there are some good things about it. So let's start with those. So first of all, I do think that the idea is a pretty good one. I like this idea of having these captured, dejected Russian troops walking down the road, being escorted by the Russian army there and the tank that's following. And the fact that we've got these other Russians at the side who are just sort of taking a break from combat and are kind of onlooking this situation as it unfolds, I think that's quite a good situation for a diorama. I also think the composition is fairly good. The idea of the soldiers and the vehicle coming diagonally through the frame on the road, I think is a good one. In general, it's best to avoid having items, whether it's buildings or vehicles, being parallel or perpendicular to the edges. So I think that works well too. I also like the idea of the river. I think it breaks up the frame quite nicely. And again, that river is going diagonally through the frame there. I like the fact that the road is raised from the surrounding area. If I remember correctly, I based that on a few reference photos. And considering it was my first attempt, I'm quite pleased with the bridge as well. Also, despite there being some obvious flaws in my painting, I have tried to address some of the details on the figures, particularly on the German soldiers, where you can see things like their insignia and their buttons, where I've tried to paint those. And I think overall, if I look at this, I have tried to add a lot of details. We've got the mud on the tank, for example, where we've got several different shades of mud, and I've tried to go for some of the wet effects there on the wheel as well. We've got lots of rust and grime on the tank. It doesn't look particularly realistic, but I've tried to go for it. I used some realistic water to make some puddles in the road. And on the stowage, on the jerry cans, for example, I've tried to add some chipping there as well. I've made sure I've painted the vehicles more or less the correct colour, including the interior of the hatch, which is white. And if we look at the bridge, I've tried to make some foliage sort of climb up the bridge there, as if the bridge is becoming overgrown. I've even got a small amount of crumbling material around there as those bricks are falling apart. Now moving on to the negatives, and I think most of these really are technical and skills issues. And I think all of those things I was trying to achieve at the time were probably a little bit more than my skills at the time would allow. So for example, let's look here at this guy kneeling down, and we can see he's got a seam line there going straight across his head, right down his arm. I just didn't tidy up that seam line. There's also a seam on the tyre there in the background. There's also a number of gaps in the figures, particularly where the arms join. And at this stage I had no real idea about filler or how to use it. Moving on to the painting, I've missed some details in a few areas. So in the amphibious vehicle there, I haven't painted anything on the dash, the gauges or anything like that. And let's look at this guy here and look at his eyes. His eyes are incredible, and not in a good way as well. This was my first and my last attempt to paint eyes on figures. Now I just use a dark wash to get the effect of eyes. None of the eyes in this scene are great, but this guy has the most amazing ones. And of course he's got a seam line that runs straight down his face as well. On the Russian figures, I've brush painted those with Tamiya enamels. These days I usually use an airbrush and I use Tamiya acrylics, but in those days I used enamels, and I haven't thinned the enamels enough, and for that reason they've got a sort of semi-glossy appearance to them. And of course I had no idea about gloss coats and matte coats and things like that back then as well. You can see also that I've done no highlight or shading on their clothing. Because I had no airbrush, I used some Tamiya spray cans for the vehicles. They've given nice coverage. There's no brush marks obviously because it's been sprayed, but it does mean that the finish is quite uniform. There's no shading there at all. The other big problem of course is the grassy areas. And firstly, I've clearly used the wrong materials here. This is a fine turf blend. I mixed two different colours to try to get some shading, but fine turf doesn't really work particularly well in this scale, in this situation. And that combines with another problem, which is that the base is a little bit too big, and that's led to these big areas of grass which are quite monotonous and quite uniform. If we look at any large space in the real world, it will never be uniform in terms of colour or texture or height, but my grass area is very uniform, and it's made worse by the fact that it's so large and therefore much more obvious. So perhaps I could have played with that composition a little bit more, maybe had fewer open spaces. Also I could have added some static grass or some seafoam trees, some reeds or some rocks to the riverbank. But of course I didn't know about those things at the time when I made this diorama. And I think that theme continues here on the bridge. If we look at the bricks, they're more or less all the same colour. I know there's a couple of slightly darker ones, but they're basically all the same. There's no streaking effects, there's no grime. It just doesn't really blend in together. The scatter material is there, but it's all the same colour straight out of the bag. And of course it's got that glossy look to it because I didn't do any matte varnishing or anything similar. So there, something like a wash might have sort of tied all of those elements together. And so I think if I had to sum this diorama up, I would say that it was a nice idea, good intentions in terms of detail, but not really the skills to execute it well at the time. Hopefully my skills have improved somewhat since then, although of course we're always learning. That said, I do remember having lots of fun with this, and being really pleased about the fact that I got that bridge going over the river there, and if you look at it from the other angle, the water does go all the way through under that bridge, so I was very happy with that at the time. Being the first diorama that I made, this does have a certain sentimental value to me, but having looked back at this, I have been inspired to improve this in terms of making a new diorama which is a similar theme, some captured troops being escorted back behind the front line, and some more troops at the side watching the world unfold around them as they take a rest. And I think reflecting on this diorama will definitely help me make that new one to a much higher standard. So guys, let me know what you think. What do you do with your old model kits? Do you go back and try to improve them? Do you get rid of them? Do you keep them on the shelf so you can look back at them? And regardless of how long you've been in the hobby of modelling, what have you learnt during that time? And what are you still working on? What are you still learning? Please do leave a comment below. I'd be really interested in hearing your thoughts and your ideas. And until next time, I would like to say thank you very much to my Patreon supporters. And thank you very much to everyone for watching. If you liked this video, then please do give it a thumbs up. And if you've got any thoughts, then you can leave a comment below. So thanks for watching and have fun until next time.